May 25th, 2021 special meeting of the Monroe County Legislature will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Alcoffer.
Here.
Mr. Alcoffer is present. Mr. Ansello.
Here.
Mr. Ansello is present. Ms. Barnhart.
Here.
Ms. Barnhart is present. Mr. Baroff.
Here.
Mr. Baroff is present. Mr. Baines.
Here.
Mr. Baines is present. Ms. Boyce.
Here.
Ms. Boyce is present. Mr. Brew.
Here.
Mr. Brew is present. President Carbone.
Here.
President Carbone is present. Mr. Colby.
Here.
Mr. Colby is present. Mr. Delahanty.
Here.
Mr. Delahanty is present. Mrs. DeFlorio.
Here.
Mrs. DeFlorio is present. Mr. Dondorfer.
Here.
Mr. Dondorfer is present. Mr. Felder.
Here.
Mr. Felder is present. Mr. Flagler-Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Flagler-Mitchell is present. Ms. Hassman.
Here.
Ms. Hassman is present. Mr. Hebert.
Here.
Mr. Hebert is present. Mr. Chiafalasi.
Here.
Mr. Chiafalasi is present. Ms. Lamar. Ms. Lamar. Mr. Lee. Mr. Mafucci.
Here.
Mr. Mafucci is present. Mr. Marionetti.
Here.
Mr. Marionetti is present. Mr. Morelli.
Here.
Mr. Morelli is present. Ms. Roman.
Here.
Ms. Roman is present. Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Smith is present. Ms. Taylor.
Here.
Ms. Taylor is present. Mr. Turp.
Here.
Mr. Turp is present. Mr. Wilcox.
Here.
Mr. Wilcox is present. Mr. Wilt.
Here.
Mr. Wilt is present. Mr. Udelson.
Here.
Mr. Udelson is present. Ms. Lamar. Ms. Lamar is absent. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee is absent.
Mr. Clerk, can you leave it open for them in case they're trying to get in?
Yep.
Thank you.
We'll need to suspend the rules of the legislature for the purpose of prohibiting public in-person attendance in accordance with Executive Order 202.1, which was extended through May 25th by Executive Order 202.103. You have a motion before you which is moved by Legislator Brew and seconded by Legislator DeFlorio. This is a non-debatable motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Please join me in a moment of silent prayer. Please stand as Legislator Turp will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the
United States of America and to the republic
for which it
which
stands,
stands
one nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty
and justice
justice
for all.
Called the special meeting of the legislature pursuant to the authority vested in me as president of the Monroe County Legislature by Section C2-9C1 of the County Charter and Section 545-5 of the Rules of the Legislature of the County of Monroe. This meeting has been closed to the public and all legislators are participating via teleconference in accordance with Executive Order 202.1 and 202.103. In keeping with this legislature's tradition of openness, the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube through the legislature's official channel. Everyone participating via video or teleconference will please mute their devices except to obtain the floor or cast a vote. If seeking to obtain the floor, please simply state your name and wait for me to call on you before proceeding with your question or statement. The clerk will read the full title of each resolution and referral to avoid any confusion as to which item is before the legislature. All votes will be held via voice vote unless a roll call is requested. Tonight we'll consider two motions for adoption, followed by a motion to convene a committee of the whole. In convening the committee of the whole, we'll also discharge those items currently referred to the committee and commit them to the committee of the whole. All legislators will be members of the committee of the whole and able to participate in debate and vote on items regardless of their respective committee assignments or which committees the referrals was initially assigned. The committee of the whole will be governed by the same rules of the legislature that govern committee meetings, and votes taken are equivalent to those taken in committee. Meaning items passed by the committee of the whole will be considered for final approval or appropriate action at the next regularly scheduled meeting of the legislature. Mr. Clerk.
The county executive vetoed a resolution number 169 of 2021 entitled authorizing allocation of emergency grant funding to support arts organizations negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Was transmitted to the legislature in public via file number 21-0206, which was deemed a read and print by President Carbone. The objections are hereby presented to the legislature and will be entered into the journal in accordance with the Monroe County Charter.
We will now hold the public forum. Mr. Clerk.
No one is registered to address the legislature, nor were any written comments submitted.
We will now proceed with the consideration of motions, resolutions, and notices. Will the clerk read the next item on the agenda?
Item number 1, referral 21-0164.LL, providing that local law intro number 175 of 2021 entitled Operation of Off-Road Vehicles on Public Highways in Monroe County be adopted as amended.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by legislator Felder, seconded by Flagler Mitchell. Is there any discussion?
Legislator Barnhart?
Yes, Legislator Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you. The issue of ATVs and dirt bikes is a very difficult one for me. I recognize that these vehicles pose a huge problem. They're not only a nuisance and annoying, but they're also a menace and they're dangerous, and we've had fatalities. But as I walk around my district, I see a number of young men in their driveways, and they're working on their bikes, and they're together, and they're talking with each other. And I realize, these are my neighbors. These young men are my neighbors. And I thought it was very important to talk to them about this problem. Because I think if we're going to make policies, we should get the input of all stakeholders. And they're certainly stakeholders. And I also did some research on urban bike culture, which is a thing across the country. One thing that these young men said loud and clear is that they're not going to stop riding. That what we're going to do tonight won't prevent them from riding these vehicles. They feel freedom, they feel camaraderie, and to them, this is their hobby. And one of the sad things that many of them told us is that they don't have much else. They have each other and they have their bikes. I recognize that enforcement does have to be part of the solution here, but I don't think it can be the only solution. We also need to look at how we can reduce the harm that these bikes are causing because there is no perfect solution. And harm reduction would include giving them a place of their own to ride, a place that is safe, and talking about what are the barriers to making these bikes legal, to giving them an entry into a constructive hobby that isn't so dangerous to themselves and to others. I will be voting for this, but I would like to move to amend, because I think that if we're going to do this enforcement action, that we should make sure that it's working and that we have adequate data. So my amendment would require police agencies to keep records and issue a report to us on a quarterly basis, which I do not believe is burdensome. So if you don't mind, right now I'm going to forward this amendment to the clerk.
Do you want to ask for a second?
Second, Morelli.
Who seconded that, please?
Morelli.
Legislator Morelli, or just Morelli?
One and the same, Mr. President.
All right, Legislator Morelli seconded that amendment.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I just lost it. Hold on. Got too many tabs open here. All right.
Mr. President,
Okay, so
do we have discussion on this?
Yes.
Yeah, as soon as we get the amendment up so we could review it, we're gonna have discussion.
okay, and I yield the floor. Thank you.
Okay.
Legislator Smith?
Well,
Let's get the amendment up.
let's get the amendment up so we could all look at it, please.
I just emailed it to Clerk Moffett, so please let me know if you don't have it.
Okay, give me one moment. Nothing yet on the email.
Nothing yet on the email, Legislator Barnhart.
If you'd like, you can share your
I'm
screen.
sorry, I think I sent it to the wrong email. I think I sent it, it bounced back to me. Okay, hold on.
That's okay, take your time.
It's been a long day. All right, try this one.
All right. Received.
Received.
Is it just the addition of G within 314-7?
Yes.
Okay.
You wanna read that, Jack? Because
Sure.
I can't see it.
The amendment adds a new section G under chapter 314-7, which has the header penalties. The addition of G reads, each law enforcement agency shall keep a record of all off-road vehicles it confiscates under this chapter, including the owner's age, race, and gender, and any fines paid. Submit a quarterly report of these records to the Monroe County.
Turn right on County.
We have the motion made by Legislator Barnhart, seconded by Legislator Morelli.
Okay, now we can have discussion on the amendment if everybody's satisfied with reading it over. I believe Legislator Smith, you asked for the floor?
I did it, Legislator Flagler.
Oh, I'm sorry, Legislator Flagler Mitchell, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Legislator Barnhart, for putting forth an amendment on this very important bill that is going forth. And although, I believe that we need to keep track of what is going on out there in the streets, this bill that we crafted was designed to possibly help folks in the community as well as those who are riding their bikes to be able to, retrieve their bikes once they confiscated. One of the issues that we heard when we was going door to door in districts is that, these ATVs and dirt bikes was tearing up the parks. And when I talk to the people who are riding them, one of their biggest issues is that, they take our bikes and they destroy them. This bill addresses both issues. This bill has in there that when the officer confiscate a bike from a person who was riding it, their job is to make sure that they put the VIN number on the bike, on the report, so that when the person try to come and retrieve their bike, they have the VIN number, which in many cases, the police departments won't release unless you have that number so that they could get it back. Another thing is that we want to make sure that when we're putting laws together, that we don't create laws that give folks reason to start to point out or single out different groups. And with this amendment, with saying a race, age, and things like that, it's going to do that. And so for me, I don't feel comfortable adding that piece in to that legislation. And I will probably be voting no on that amendment. But I do see and understand her idea behind it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Legislator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say a few words about the local law as I saw it. Throughout the early weeks of the spring and as we approach the summer, there's been an undeniable uptick in accidents and incidences of large groups of ATVs, dirt bikes, and other off-road vehicles illegally operating on public roadways. The reckless use of these vehicles, disregarding traffic laws, harassing motorists, and
Legislator Smith?
yes.
We're just talking about the amendment now.
Okay.
Those statements we'll do when we go back to the original referral. Thank you.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Thank you, President.
Legislator Barnhart.
Legislator Barnhart.
Thanks. I just wanted to respond to Legislator Flagler Mitchell. I agree we shouldn't be singling anyone out, which is exactly why I proposed this. I'm very worried that we're going to be criminalizing Black and brown young men. And collecting data will tell us if the result of this legislation will do that. And I just want you to know that that is the intent behind collecting data. We won't know if anyone is being singled out if we don't have this data. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Any further discussion? Just like to take into consideration, if we amend this, it couldn't get passed for at least another, how many weeks, Jay?
A minimum of 10 days.
A minimum of 10 days, which isn't the end of the world, but that's, any further discussion on the amendment?
Legislator Hebert.
Legislator Hebert, you have the floor.
Just a quick question to the creator of the amendment. Can we legally ask the RPD to do reporting? That's the question.
I don't know. I don't know. And that is a good question. Perhaps our law department would have the answer to that through the president of the administration.
Through you, Mr. President, this is the county attorney. I believe we can ask for the reporting. We couldn't necessarily require RPD to give it, or any other policing agency that doesn't fall within the jurisdiction of Monroe County.
So that's a moot point. Any further discussion on the amendment?
Legislator Barnhart.
Go ahead, Legislator Barnhart.
Through the president to the administration, if the sheriff were taking part in any details, multi-agency details, the sheriff could keep that data, no?
Through you, Mr. President, that's correct. Yes, the sheriff could.
Not a moot point. Thank you.
Mr. President, Legislator Felder.
Legislator Felder.
I want to go back and visit this question about criminalizing behavior. If something is illegal, it's illegal. These bikes are already illegal to be on public roads. So you're not criminalizing anything by creating penalties for people who do things that are illegal. But so that's That argument falls flat with me. I'm a black man, and I know a lot of the young people, some of the young people who ride these bicycles, and I tell them to get off of it because they're not supposed to be on the road. And at some point, you have to weigh. You say we're criminalizing people, but then you look at the accident. You look at the child that died on one of these bicycles, on one of these illegal bikes. And you look at the time, the 2 or 3 times I'm almost hit one myself on the road. And the other half is so you weigh. Okay, what's more important? I think we're doing a good job of trying to educate people on the fact these things do not belong on public roads. They're called off-road vehicles for a reason. And if you try to make excuses for people who are riding these bicycles when they're not supposed to be, saying we're criminal, we're not criminalizing anything. They're not supposed to be out there on public roads with these bicycles, but they continue to get on the road with it. And something has to be done about it. Because the next time they run into a car, the next time they run into somebody that's walking down the street. So, that argument falls flat about criminalizing their behavior because it's already illegal.
Should we go to a roll call vote on the amendment? Is that all right with everyone?
Yes.
Mr. Clerk?
All right. On the amendment, Mr. Brew.
No.
Mr. Brew votes no. Mr. Felder.
No.
Mr. Felder votes no. Mr. Flagler Mitchell.
No.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell votes no. Mr. Alcoffer.
No.
Mr. Alcoffer votes no. Mr. Ansello.
No.
Mr. Ansello votes no. Ms. Barnhart.
Yes.
Ms. Barnhart votes yes. Mr. Baroff.
Yes.
Mr. Baroff votes yes. Mr. Baines.
Yes.
Mr. Baines votes yes. Ms. Boyce.
No.
Ms. Boyce votes no. Mr. Colby.
No.
Mr. Colby votes no. Mr. Delahanty.
No.
Delahanty votes no. Mrs. DeFlorio.
No.
Mrs. DeFlorio votes no. Mr. Dondorfer.
No.
Mr. Dondorfer votes no. Ms. Hassman.
Yes.
Ms. Hassman votes yes. Mr. Hebert.
No.
Mr. Hebert votes no. Mr. Keofalassi.
No.
Mr. Keofalassi votes no. Ms. Lamar.
Yes.
Lamar votes yes. Mr. Lee.
No.
Mr. Lee votes no. Mr. Mafucci.
Yes.
Mr. Mafucci votes yes. Mr. Marionetti.
No.
Mr. Marionetti votes no. Mr. Morelli.
Yes.
Mr. Morelli votes yes. Ms. Roman.
Yes.
Ms. Roman votes yes. Ms. Smith.
No.
Ms. Smith votes no. Ms. Taylor.
No.
Ms. Taylor votes no. Mr. Terp.
No.
Mr. Terp votes no. Mr. Wilcox.
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox votes yes. Mr. Wilt.
No.
Mr. Wilt votes no. Mr. Udelson.
Yes.
Mr. Udelson votes yes. President Carbone.
No.
President Carbone votes no. 10-19, the amendment fails.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Legislator Lee. Did you get my vote?
Yes, Steve, we recorded a vote of no. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, excuse me.
Yes.
I'm sorry I missed the roll call, so I just want to make sure that my attendance is duly noted.
Yes, Legislator, we noted your attendance when you joined the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Lamar. Okay, back to the original referral. Any further discussion?
Legislator Baines.
I believe Legislator Smith, did you want to go back to your original comment, or do you want Legislator Baines to go first?
Yes, if Legislator Baines doesn't mind, I'll just finish the comment that I started.
Is that okay with you, Legislator Baines?
Oh, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just getting back, the reckless use of these vehicles disregarding the traffic laws, harassing motorists, and decreasing the quality of life in our neighborhoods across our region cannot go unchecked. It is the aim of the Monroe County Legislature to assist law enforcement organizations in reducing the illegal use of these vehicles. Through this local law, additional fines and impoundment policies will be implemented to both curb individuals from choosing illegally using off-road vehicles. When necessary, remove them from our streets entirely. An individual who gets their vehicle impounded must provide proper proof of insurance and ownership of the vehicle in order to retrieve it. Additionally, this law mandates the use of the New York State Certified Safety Helmet for all those using ATV, dirt bikes, and other off-road vehicles in a legal manner to ensure the safety of the driver and any passengers. By giving the law enforcement organizations throughout Monroe County and the city of Rochester, these additional tools make our streets safer for our bystanders, motorists, and the drivers of these off-road vehicles will all be safer in our communities. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Thank you. Legislator Baines.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the makers of the motion, was this practice of confiscating and then impounding vehicles discussed with law enforcement?
Legislator Baines, is that to Flagler Mitchell or to Felder?
Well, they're co-makers of the motion, and so I make that request of both makers of the motion, please, Mr. President.
Who would like to address that, legislators?
Through you, Mr. President, from what I understand, they've already been doing that.
Did you hear that, Legislator Baines?
I did. Through you, Mr. President, are you aware, this is to the makers of the motion, how long the law enforcement agencies will hold on to these vehicles until they're sold at auction?
Through you, Mr. President, well, this legislation gives the people those whose bikes are confiscated the ability to get them back.
Through you, Mr. President, to the makers of the motion, we've just heard a description from Legislator Smith of what the requirements will be to have them returned. And, I was a local judge and involved in these cases for 10 years. And my expectation is that the vast majority of these bikes, unless they're in the $5,000 or more range, will never be returned. So my question again to the makers of the motion is every agency, we're talking about the Fairport Police, the Brockport Police, small departments, small-ish departments, do they all have an impoundment policy? How long will they hold these bikes? Will they expose their municipalities to litigation when people try to redeem the bikes and the bikes have been sold at auction? Who will be able to buy the bikes at auction? These questions are all going to be triggered by this practice. Have we considered these implications?
That's a question you have to ask them.
Through you, Mr. President. Pardon me, Legislator Felder, I didn't hear you.
Mr. President, that's a question you have to ask those police agents.
Well, I would think that the makers of the motion would ask those questions, but I'm here to try to vote on a policy that I don't want to have unintended consequences for law enforcement or municipalities. Mr. President, in light of the fact that we don't really have a lot of feedback from our law enforcement folk, and we've already discussed how this body, cannot necessarily put requirements on law enforcement, I would move to table this until we can hear from law enforcement as to how these practices will be put in place by the many agencies that will be required to administer this law. Motion to table.
Second.
Who seconded that, please?
Legislator Roman.
Legislator Roman seconded. No discussion on a tabling motion. Roll call vote.
Mr. President, Legislator Boyce.
No discussion on the tabling motion.
Yeah, sorry, Legislator Boyce. like I said, there's no discussion on the tabling motion, so we're gonna go to a roll call vote,
On the
okay?
tabling motion, Mr. Brew.
No.
Mr. Brew votes no. Mr. Felder.
No.
Mr. Felder votes no. Mr. Flagler Mitchell.
No.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell votes no. Mr. Alcoffer.
No.
Mr. Alcoffer votes no. Mr. Ansello.
No.
Mr. Ansello votes no. Ms. Barnhart.
Yes.
Ms. Barnhart votes yes. Mr. Baroff.
Yes.
Mr. Baroff votes yes. Mr. Baines.
Yes.
Mr. Baines votes yes. Ms. Boyce.
No.
Ms. Boyce votes no. Mr. Colby.
No.
Mr. Colby votes no. Mr. Delahanty.
No.
Mr. Delahanty votes no. Mrs. DeFlorio.
No.
Mr. DeFlorio votes no. Mr. Dondorfer.
No.
Mr. Dondorfer votes no. Ms. Hassman.
Yes.
Ms. Hassman votes yes. Mr. Hebert.
No.
Mr. Hebert votes no. Mr. Chiafalasi.
No.
Mr. Chiafalasi votes no. Ms. Lamar.
No.
Ms. Lamar votes no. Mr. Lee.
No.
Mr. Lee votes no. Mr. Mafucci.
Yes.
Mr. Mafucci votes yes. Mr. Marionetti.
No.
Mr. Marionetti votes no. Mr. Morelli.
No.
Mr. Morelli votes no. Ms. Roman.
Yes.
Ms. Roman votes yes. Ms. Smith.
No.
Ms. Smith votes no. Ms. Taylor.
No.
Ms. Taylor votes no. Mr. Turp.
No.
Mr. Turp votes no. Mr. Wilcox.
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox votes yes. Mr. Wilt.
No.
Mr. Wilt votes no. Mr. Udelson.
Yes.
Mr. Udelson votes yes. President Carbone.
No.
President Carbone votes no. 8 to 21, the motion to table fails.
Legislator Colby.
Legislator Colby of the floor.
Thank you, President. I think for a point of reference, most law enforcement, I know the town of Ogden, and I'm pretty sure when I've talked to the Brockport police, they have the same policy. They already have an impoundment policy for like bicycles, four-wheelers, dirt bikes, snowmobiles, motorcycles, cars, pickup trucks. They have a policy in place. It might even be state statute, how long they have to keep a vehicle or any kind of stolen item, be it a handgun, be it a stereo. They already have a policy how long they have to keep something on hand before they can auction it. And as far as auctioning off vehicles or things, there's already a state policy on how they can handle those. So I think waiting for that to be asked is a moot point, because these agencies already have these policies in place of how long they have to hang on to something before they can dispose of it through an auction type system. So that's why I will be voting in favor of this law tonight. Is unamended. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Colby. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. President, Legislator Boyce.
Go ahead, Legislator Boyce, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to with regards to, I know we already, are not going to table this, but with regards to the issue of law enforcement having a say in this, as a public safety chair and an active member of the Law Enforcement Council, I did send the legislation to the chairman of the Law Enforcement Council, and I have they did not give me any negativity towards the legislation, and certainly they would have if they had any concerns. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Should we go to a roll call vote? Okay, Mr. Clerk.
On the local law, Mr. Brew.
Yes.
Mr. Brew votes yes. Mr. Felder.
Yes.
Mr. Felder votes yes. Mr. Flagler Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell votes yes. Mr. Alcoffer.
Yes.
Mr. Alcoffer votes yes. Mr. Ansello.
Yes.
Mr. Ansello votes yes. Ms. Barnhart.
Yes.
Ms. Barnhart votes yes. Mr. Baroff.
Yes.
Mr. Baroff votes yes. Mr. Baines.
Yes.
Mr. Baines votes yes. Ms. Boyce?
Yes.
Ms. Boyce votes yes. Mr. Colby?
Yes.
Mr. Colby votes yes. Mr. Delahanty?
Yes.
Mr. Delahanty votes yes. Mrs. DeFlorio?
Yes.
Mr. DeFlorio votes yes. Mr. Dondorfer?
Yes.
Mr. Dondorfer votes yes. Ms. Hassman?
Yes.
Ms. Hassman votes yes. Mr. Hebert?
Yes.
Mr. Hebert votes yes. Mr. Keofelasi?
Yes.
Mr. Keofelasi votes yes. Ms. Lamar? Ms. Lamar?
Yes.
Ms. Lamar votes yes. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Mr. Mafucci?
Yes.
Mr. Mafucci votes yes. Mr. Marionetti?
Yes.
Mr. Marionetti votes yes. Mr. Morelli?
Yeah.
Mr. Morelli votes yes. Ms. Roman?
Yes.
Ms. Roman votes yes. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Smith votes yes. Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Taylor votes yes. Mr. Turp?
Yes.
Mr. Turp votes yes. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox votes yes. Mr. Wilt?
Yes.
Mr. Wilt votes yes. Mr. Udelson?
Yes.
Mr. Udelson votes yes. President Carbone?
Yes.
President Carbone votes yes. 29-0, the motion to adopt is approved.
Next item.
Item number 2, referral 21-0165, providing that the veto by the county executive of resolution number 169 of 2021, as amended by motion number 53 of 2021, be overridden.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second it.
Second.
Second.
Legislator Brew, seconded by Legislator DeFlorio, Legislators Felder, Flagler Mitchell, Lamar Lee, and Quito Fatlasi.
Mr. President, Legislator Brew.
Legislator Brew, discussion.
In 1,000 feet.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to say a few words about the need for this override and necessity of this legislation. Unfortunately, the county executive has once again chosen to veto legislation adopted with bipartisan support, this time simply to provide our struggling arts organizations with the funding they need and deserve. It is truly disappointing we must act so frequently to right the wrongs of a politically motivated and partisan actions by this administration. Our local arts organizations have gone years without receiving proper funding, and despite campaign promises, this year's budget contained almost identical funding to years past. Now, faced with the ramifications of COVID-19 pandemic, our local arts organizations are on the brink of collapse. In response, legislators Felder, Flagler Mitchell, and Keofit Lacey rightfully submitted a matter of urgency to immediately address these concerns. All of the identified organizations have previously received limited allocations of hotel motel tax from Monroe County. Adopted with bipartisan support, this legislation would provide funds to these organizations that need our help, and they need it fast. This is not partisan. This is not about the limelight. This is not about who gets credit and how. This is about doing what's right for our community, and it's troubling that some do not see it as so. I'm grateful to all of the legislators who understand this and will join me in overriding this politically motivated and partisan veto. While these temporary assistance will help through these trying times, our local arts organizations must be protected and funded to ensure their continuity long into the future. I look forward to seeing a budget next year that properly demonstrates this county's commitment to the arts. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Legislator. Further discussion?
Yes.
Legislator Baines?
Mr. President, Legislator Flagler Mitchell.
Legislator Baines, Legislator Flagler Mitchell seconded the motion. He can speak first. Go ahead, Legislator Flagler Mitchell.
Thank you so much. I am asking each and every legislator to follow me in overriding the veto. It's important that we understand that people are suffering and going through hardship. And the folks who is on that list, and there's many more, and we may not have gotten everybody, but this here is a start to make sure that the county doing its part in helping those who is truly in need. For so long, so many resources have been allocated elsewhere. The CARES Act money that the county exec had for such a while could have been used for this. And I'm also excited that he is doing his own thing. However, on top of that, we're asking the people who came to the press conference, who reached out for help, to wait until the county and the county uh, law department and their purchasing department or whatever department that program is attached to get a game plan together. For me, it's about helping those that don't have a voice. We've seen this before when they did a press conference on the Black businesses, say we wanted to help Black business owners. Many of those owners was denied services from the CARES Act money. This time we are able to do something from the legislature ourselves. We didn't gonna do nothing then, but now we can help those who need some help at this time. And so I'm gonna be voting to override the county exec veto because I don't trust the process that is being created to ensure that those that look like me have a fair shot at getting the funds. Now, I could be proven wrong. I can. However, there are many business owners who sitting back looking like, I thought we was going to be able to get help from the county. So I will be voting to override this veto because it's about the people. It's not about politics. Politics, that is what it is. But it's about the people that need help. And some of these art organizations, they are just hanging on by a thread. They don't need, a lot of them is paying for stuff right out of their pockets. And we're trying to ask them to wait for another process to come into place, and you might get it, where we as legislators can do something right now. So I'm hoping everybody vote to override this veto so that we can help the people, to ensure that the people get this. And then support the legislation that the county executive is creating so that they could get more, because they deserve it. They deserve it. This is how we right a wrong. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any further discussion by any of the seconders? If not, we'll go to Legislator Baines.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's appropriate in that we're in COVID protocol and on Zoom, and would be if we were live, to actually read into the video record the veto that is about to be overridden. First, this resolution is deeply flawed from a legal and technical perspective. The New York State Constitution generally prohibits the county
Mr. President, it's out of order.
Private organizations. There are ways to provide such grants to arts organizations.
Mr. President, point of order. We all can read. We've all read the county executive's veto resolution. It's out of order. Out of order for Legislator Baines to be reading it now.
Mr. President, I think that the "we" referenced by Legislator Felder is the legislature. This is being read into the record for the community.
It's a matter of record for the community, Mr. President.
Yeah, and I think the community has the right to hear.
I'll uphold the point of order. It is a matter of record. Anything else, Legislator Baines?
You're overriding the reading into the record of the actual veto?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. Any further discussion?
Legislator
Felder?
Legislator Barnhart.
Did you want the floor, Legislator Felder, or did I miss?
I'll go next.
I can't hear you.
I'll go next. She already spoke up. I'll go next.
Okay, Legislator Felder.
Barnhart.
Okay, legislator Barnhart.
Thank you. So I voted for this legislation with strong reservations. My reservations were based in the fact that I really don't like handpicking organizations. I really would prefer a regular grant process. When the president, Carbone, said, okay, Arundecoit Arts Club for $5,000, I wanted to say, okay, Gay Men's Chorus for $10,000, Alex. I mean, this is not how we're supposed to be doing grants. And I recognize that our arts organizations are struggling. I recognize that there are many small and mid-level organizations that have been denied county funding and frankly funding from a lot of sources in our community. We need a more equitable process going forward. But two things have happened since my vote. Number one, we got the veto message that spelled out some problems. And I'd be willing to table this legislation if someone else wants to make the motion, or I could make it if we want to work those things out to make this better, to address those issues. But the other thing that happened that's really important is that this grant program was announced that would give everyone an opportunity to apply. It's not a competition. Everyone can apply. And I think that's the way to go. This way we could vet applications, make sure that people have their financials in order and everything else. And that's responsible in my opinion, and it's equitable. The other thing that I would say about this, so I'm not going to vote to override this. Unless there's a will to amend the legislation to fix it. But the other point that I would make that I think is really important here is I don't think this grant program or this legislation should be the end here. We really need an equitable way to fund our arts organizations well into the future. Ideally, what we would do is take that hotel motel tax, put it into a fund that people can apply for grants, but we would collaborate with philanthropy. We get some state funding. We collaborate with the city, make a real big pot of money like they have in other communities where small, mid-level, and large organizations can apply for funding and have a fair grant process. That is what I think equity would look like. And it would provide more funding for everybody. So I hope that we work on that. I'd like to see something in the upcoming budget that addresses this issue. But I recognize we have an issue right now. And I believe that the grant program announced by the county executive will address that. And I think it's the responsible way to go about this. So I will not be voting to override. Thank you.
Legislator Felder.
Go ahead, legislator Felder.
The county executive had over a year to provide funding for these arts organizations. Had over a year to do it. I know people have been talking to them. I'm not going to out anybody because I know how vindictive Morelli camp is, and I don't want to get anybody where they won't get any funding. But the fact is, he has not kept his word. And so we come along and say, hey, we're going to right some of this wrong. If you look at mid-sized arts report, let's look. I got the budget up in front of me right now. When you take out the city of Rochester, the Blue Cross Arena Convention Center, and the Visit Rochester, we talk about process. What process determined that the Rochester Museum of Science Center gets $900,000? Not that they don't deserve it, but what process determined it? What process determined that RPO gets $180,000? Who decided the Strong Museum gets $60,000? Susan Anthony gets $60,000. So this society about process is a hypocritical red herring. You got to call that what it is. We've had an equitable system. You got Garth Fagan Dance. Garth Fagan, who's world renowned, got an Emmy Award. Got a Tony Award, and I believe an Academy Award. And he can't even get $5,000 for Garth Fagan Dance and all the things they do in the city. You got the Riggin Dance Theater. Been out around almost 40 years. Never gotten a dime from the county. You got the Avenue Black Box Theater up on Joseph Avenue, one of the most challenged neighborhoods in the city. Never gotten a dime from the county. And there's the other little small organizations, mostly of color, have never gotten anything from the county. So we come along and say, hey, we're going to try to do something to help some of these people who need help. Not that it's perfect, not that we're going to catch everybody, because I had other people came up to me afterwards and said, you forgot about this group and that group. And I said, well, we'll do something else to help them, because it's not about trying to help people just because we know them. It's about trying to help people who actually have never gotten anything, because we take all the money and we give it to a few people. And so at the end we got $45,000 to spread around to a bunch of people. When some organizations can use $20,000 by themselves or $30,000 by themselves, well, all we have is $45,000 at the end of the day. So after we come along and fix this problem and say, at least temporarily, say, look, we're going to do something for this year just to help these people out. He waits 2 weeks while he tries to figure out something else to do. Because those same legal issues that he claims is this and I can prove that they're not legitimate, were there 2 weeks ago when we passed it. See, he waits till he finds something else to do to try to replace what we've done. And then even with that, he's going to give the people less than what we're going to give them. And then you start saying things that people who have fiduciaries, like some of our small organizations don't have the right to get money because the money's not coming directly to them. What kind of foolishness is that? So and then he says, well, then he says, well, the president doesn't have the legislature doesn't have the authority to enter into contracts. That's not true. You may not like it, but the president or the legislature doesn't have the authority to enter into contracts. So the entire veto is a lie. It's dishonest. It's dishonest and it's diversionary, because the reality of it is he was upset. He felt upstaged because he hadn't done anything. And even at the last meeting when the deputy county executive was speaking, he basically made it very clear they weren't planning to do anything different this year because, well, COVID had the money down at the hotel multiplex last year. It's down again this year. So basically, nothing was going to be done this year. So the idea that he was intending on doing something prior to 2 weeks ago is foolishness. The reality of it is he waited until after the legislature acted and did something because he wanted to take the credit for himself. Vetoed our bill and try to replace it with what he done. What he's doing, great. The more the merrier. But that means is now the $20,000 that we allocated to the Avenue Black Box Theater, now they're eligible for $40,000. That's wonderful. Because these $20,000 they can get from his thing. This is not competition. But I am not going to allow the county executive to come in after we've done something that he had the opportunity to do, just like with indigent burials, that he dilly-dallied for over a year with. We finally did something about it. He makes promises. He made promises to people that he was going to do things, did not do them, and got upset when we did them. If he keeps his promises, he don't have anything to worry about. But when people come to me and say we need help, I'm going to try to help them. That's what this contingency fund, people call a slush fund, when it's not to their benefit. That's what they want to call it. Whatever you want to call it. That's why we created this fund, to be able to help organizations. And that's what we're doing here, and that's what we're going to continue to do. And I was very disappointed when I learned on Friday that he had vetoed legislation. I figured, well, maybe he'll let this go because he realizes it's bad. But I should have known that he was going to try to do what he did yesterday. And as I said, I welcome more funding, because some of these organizations need it because they've never gotten anything from the county. You got organizations that got millions and millions of dollars over the years from Monroe County, and our small organizations, usually all the people of color, have gotten nothing. That's wrong. That's what we sought to correct in this with this legislation. That's what we did, and we're going to override this veto. If there are any technical issues that need to be corrected in terms of certain things, we'll do that as we move towards the disbursement phase of it. But the allocations, the legislation is sound. If there are any questions about how we do things, the process is being worked out. Nobody's gotten any money yet. We'll work those things out, but we're not going to allow this veto to stand because the people came to us and needed this. And if he wanted to do something, he had a year and 4 months to do something, and he waited until we did something to decide he wanted to do something. So with that, I'd like to call the question and move this forward.
Mr. President, I'd like to speak first, please.
Do we have a second to call the question?
I second it. Second.
We need 20 votes to call the question. Mr. Clerk?
Yes, silence.
On the motion to call the previous question, Mr. Brew.
Yes.
Mr. Brew votes yes. Mr. Felder.
Yes.
Mr. Felder votes yes. Mr. Feigler Mitchell.
Absolutely yes.
Mr. Feigler Mitchell votes yes. Mr. Alcoffer.
Yes.
Mr. Alcoffer votes yes. Mr. Ansello.
Yes.
Mr. Ansello votes yes. Ms. Barnhart.
No.
Ms. Barnhart votes no. Mr. Baroff.
Mr. Baroff?
Mr. Baines?
No.
Mr. Baines votes no. Ms. Boyce?
Yes.
Ms. Boyce votes yes. Mr. Colby?
Yes.
Mr. Colby votes yes. Mr. Delahanty?
Yes.
Mr. Delahanty votes yes. Mrs. DeFlorio?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFlorio votes yes. Mr. Dondorfer?
Yes.
Mr. Dondorfer votes yes. Ms. Hassman?
No.
Ms. Hassman votes no. Mr. Hebert?
Yes.
Mr. Hebert votes yes. Mr. Kiofelasi?
Yes.
Mr. Kiofelasi votes yes. Ms. Lamar?
Yes.
Ms. Lamar votes yes. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Mr. Mafucci?
No.
Mr. Mafucci votes no. Mr. Marionetti?
Yes.
Mr. Marionetti votes yes. Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Morelli votes no. Ms. Roman?
No.
Ms. Roman votes no. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Smith votes yes. Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Taylor votes yes. Mr. Turp?
Yes.
Mr. Turp votes yes. Mr. Wilcox?
No.
Mr. Wilcox votes no. Mr. Wilt?
Yes.
Mr. Wilt votes yes. Mr. Udelson?
No.
Mr. Udelson votes no. President Carbone?
Yes.
President Carbone votes yes. Mr. Baroff? 20-8. The previous question is moved. Roll call vote.
Roll call vote on the,
On the motion to override, Mr. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Brew votes yes. Mr. Felder? Mr. Felder?
Oh.
Mr. Felder?
Can you hear me?
I got you now. Your vote on the motion to override, Mr. Felder?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Felder votes yes. Mr. Flagler Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell votes yes. Mr. Alcoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Alcoffer votes yes. Mr. Ansello?
Yes.
Mr. Ansello votes yes. Ms. Barnhart?
No.
Ms. Barnhart votes no. Mr. Baroff?
No.
Mr. Baroff votes no. Mr. Baines?
No.
Mr. Baines votes no. Ms. Boyce?
Yes.
Ms. Boyce votes yes. Mr. Colby?
Yes.
Mr. Colby votes yes. Mr. Delahanty?
Yes.
Mr. Delahanty votes yes. Mrs. DeFlorio?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFlorio votes yes. Mr. Dondor?
Yes.
Dorfer? Mr. Dondorfer votes yes. Ms. Hassman?
No.
Ms. Hassman votes no. Mr. Hebert?
Yes.
Mr. Hebert votes yes. Mr. Kiofelasi?
Yes.
Mr. Kiofelasi votes yes. Ms. Lamar?
Yes.
Lamar votes yes. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Mr. Mafucci?
No.
Mr. Mafucci votes no. Mr. Marionetti?
Yes.
Mr. Marionetti votes yes. Mr. Morelli?
No.
Mr. Morelli votes no. Ms. Roman?
No.
Ms. Roman votes no. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Smith votes yes. Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Taylor votes yes. Mr. Turp?
Yes.
Mr. Turp votes yes. Mr. Wilcox?
No.
Mr. Wilcox votes no. Mr. Wilt?
Yes.
Mr. Wilt votes yes. Mr. Udelson?
No.
Mr. Udelson votes no. President Carbone?
yes.
President Carbone votes yes, needing a 3/5 majority to pass. The motion to override the veto is
Good.
adopted.
How you doing?
Point of information.
John, I'm vaccinated. Do you mind?
Point of
if I-
information.
I am too. Take it off.
Legislator Flagler Mitchell, your microphone.
Point of information, please.
What's the point? Who's that?
Legislator
Barra, point of information, please.
Yes, Legislator Barra.
Thank you. My question, Mr. President, is how is it that I can wait politely to listen to what other people have to say and I'm not given the opportunity to speak on a matter that I think is of vital importance? Instead, my question is called, even when I make it clear that I still have something to say, I have not said anything prior. What is the process for all the legislators to actually be heard without being silenced by a 2/3 majority at the whim of the majority? I mean, what do I need to do? Interrupt? Do I have to jump up and yell and scream? Come on. This is a legislative body. We're supposed to be debating at least, or at least discussing. We're not even allowed to do that.
Legislator,
I respect the rules. How do I do this, sir?
Well, do you want me to break the rules? He called the question. We had a vote. Those are the rules. What would you like
In
me
this
to
case,
do?
sir, you have some discretion to say, would the maker wait for another legislator to speak on this matter? You have that authority. You have that flexibility to ask the maker if he or she would be willing to make that sort of adjustment. You have that power, sir. Come on, this is a body of discussion. And I've been very respectful. But I just got disrespected and silenced.
Thank you for your point of
So there's no
information.
answer, sir? No response?
No.
You provide the answer, correct?
I did. I provided the answer. I said those are the
That
rules.
you had to
we're
obey
going
the
by.
rules, and that was the response.
Yes, that's my response. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 3, motion to discharge, convene, and commit, providing that file numbers 21-0170 through 21-0173, 21-0175 through 21-0181, 21-0183 through 21-0205, and 21-0207 through 21-0208 be discharged from the agenda charter, public safety, plan and economic development, recreation, education, intergovernmental relations, transportation, human services, environment and public works, and ways and means committees, providing that the legislature convene a committee of the whole, and providing that file numbers 21-0170 through 21-0173, 21-0175 through 21-0181, 21-0183 through 21-0205, and 21-0207 through 21-0208 be committed to the committee of the whole.
Moved by legislator Bruce, seconded by legislator DeFlorio. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. At this time, we'll recess the May 25th, 2021 special meeting of the Monroe County Legislature, and we will convene the committee of the whole. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Alcoffer.
Here.
Mr. Alcoffer is here. Mr. Ansello.
Here.
Mr. Ansello is here. Ms. Barnhart.
Here.
Ms. Barnhart is here. Mr. Baroff.
Here.
Mr. Baroff is here. Mr. Baines.
Here.
Mr. Baines is here. Ms. Boyce.
Here.
Ms. Boyce is here. Mr. Brew.
Here.
Mr. Brew is here. President Carbone.
Here.
President Carbone is here. Mr. Colby.
Here.
Mr. Colby is here. Mr. Delahanty.
Here.
Mr. Delahanty is here. Mr. DeFlorio.
Here.
DeFlorio is here. Mr. Dondorfer.
Here. Here.
Mr. Dondorfer is here. Mr. Felder. Mr. Felder.
Present. Here.
Mr. Felder is here. Mr. Flagler Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell is here. Ms. Hassman.
Here.
Ms. Hassman is here. Mr. Hebert.
Here.
Mr. Hebert is here. Mr. Chiafalasi.
Here.
Mr. Chiafalasi is here. Ms. Lamar.
Here.
Ms. Lamar is here. Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Lee is here. Mr. Mafucci.
Here.
Mr. Mafucci is here. Mr. Marionetti.
Here.
Mr. Marionetti is here. Mr. Morelli.
Here.
Mr. Morelli is here. Ms. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Roman is here. Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Smith is here. Ms. Taylor.
Here.
Ms. Taylor is here. Mr. Turp.
Here.
Mr. Turp is here. Mr. Wilcox.
Here.
Mr. Wilcox is here. Mr. Wilt.
Here.
Mr. Wilt is here. Mr. Udelson.
Here.
Mr. Udelson is here.
We'll now hold the public forum. Mr. Clerk.
There's no one registered to address the committee of the whole, nor were any written comments submitted.
Patrick Gooch, Senior Planner from Monroe County's Planning and Development Department, will now give us an overview of the 2022 through 2027 Capital Improvement Program. Mr. Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. President. You should have all received a copy of the recommended 2022-2027 Capital Improvement Program, known as the CIP. This report reflects the culmination of an 11-month process beginning in late summer, with the departments proposing a 6-year funding plan for capital projects. A committee reviews the plans proposed by county departments, asks for changes to their 6-year programs based on overall project priority and fiscal constraints and opportunities presented each year. After review by the county executive, the CIP is submitted to the Monroe County Planning Board. Planning Board reviews the CIP, holds a public hearing, and sets priorities for the capital budget year, which is the first year of CIP, 2022 in this case. The Planning Board returns the proposed CIP to the county executive, who then submits it to your honorable body. At the June meeting of the legislature, you will set a public hearing for your August meeting, and then upon your favorable review, you will vote to adopt the plan. The 6-year capital program is summarized in Table 1 on pages 2 and 3 of the CIP. We'll look at the program in terms of funding sources, budget year funding, and new projects. Funding sources are defined on page 1 of the CIP. In the third paragraph, and the top titled Financing the County's Projects, you'll find in the last few sentences. The funding table for each project will indicate whether the funding source is C, which stands for county funding, which we bond for, CC for cash capital, comes from the operating budget, D for district funding, which is a parcel-based charge, DC for district cash, which comes from Pure Water's operating budget, E for enterprise funds, which are user fees, P for private funds. F is for federal funds, and/or S is for state funds. This year, there are 143 projects in the recommended CIP. 66 of those projects scheduled for the 2022 budget year, and there are 14 new projects. Table 2 on pages 4 and 5 of your CIP lists the 66 capital budget projects in priority order as determined by the Monroe County Planning Board. 2022 capital projects will require just over $53 million in county funding. Now I will turn to individual departments in the CIP per their pertinence to each individual committee of this body. 2 sections of the CIP are pertinent to the Public Safety Committee, the Department of Public Safety, and the Sheriff's Office. Information about the Department of Public Safety's 6-year program begins on page 82. There are 14 projects in the program. None are new to the CIP this year. 3 projects have changes in their funding schedules based on understanding of project needs and priority. These are the 911 phone system and the 911 logging recorder replacement. The public safety program accounts for 3.2% of the total capital improvement program. The Sheriff's program begins on page 90 of your CIP. There are 10 projects in the Sheriff's program, and 3 of the projects are new this year. Sheriff's Office Active Shooter Firearm and PPE Replacement Project, Sheriff's Office Marine Unit Vessel Replacement Project, and Hall of Justice Plaza Level Security Project. The Sheriff's program accounts for 5.4% of the total capital improvement program. There are 4 sections of the CIP pertinent to the Recreation and Education Committee: MCC, the Library, the Parks Department, and the Zoo. MCC's funding plan, which begins on page 12, contains 6 projects, 2 of which are new: expand virtual learning center and improve safety of downtown campus entrance. The college completed their facilities master plan update earlier this year, and as a result, one of the projects in last year's CIP, expand the Visual and Performing Arts Center, or VAPA, and renovate Building 4, was eliminated from the CIP. Note that all county funding for MCC is matched by the state. MCC's program accounts for 13.9% of the total capital improvement program. The Monroe County Library System begins on page 20. The library system automation is a county-funded project that provides ongoing support for and upgrades to the library's automated system. A new project was added this year: Monroe County Library System Fleet Replacement. The library program accounts for 0.3% of the total capital improvement program. The 6-year program for county funding of the Parks Department and Seneca Park Zoo begins on page 53. The general pattern for the Parks Department is to fund a master plan update, then design, and then implementation. Master plan update recommendations usually include things like accessibility improvements, trail rehabilitation, and lighting upgrades. The Parks program accounts for 2.9%, and the zoo accounts for 9.8% of the total recommended capital improvement program. There are 2 sections of the CIP pertinent to the Transportation Committee: highways and bridges and traffic engineering. The Department of Transportation's Highways and Bridges program begins on page 60 of the CIP. There are 27 projects in this program, 3 of which are new road projects and not scheduled to be funded until 2026 or the out years. Most of the funding comes from the county, but there is state and federal funding as well, and even 1 project with private funding. The Highway and Bridge program accounts for just over 18% of the total capital improvement program. The Department of Transportation's traffic engineering program begins on page 75 of the CIP. There are 10 traffic engineering projects. None are new to the CIP this year. Traffic engineering projects are county funded. The traffic engineering program accounts for 4% of the total capital program. And transportation as a whole accounts for over 20% of the CIP funding and almost 36% of county funds programmed in the CIP. There are 2 sections of the CIP pertinent to the Human Services Committee: the Medical Examiner's Office and Monroe County Hospital. The Medical Examiner's program is found on page 10 of your CIP. Typically, each year, the Medical Examiner's Office upgrades outdated instruments to new state-of-the-art equipment to enhance speed and analytic capability in determining cause and manner of death. The Medical Examiner's proposed program accounts for 0.3% of the total capital program. The Monroe Community Hospital program begins on page 16 of the CIP. MCH is a residential chronic care facility owned and operated by Monroe County. MCH is in the recommended CIP are the same as in the adopted CIP previously. In total, the MCH program accounts for almost 3% of the capital program. 2 sections of the recommended CIP pertinent to the Intergovernmental Relations Committee are Information Services and Board of Elections. Information Services supports network connectivity across the county, as well as tools for HR, finance, and asset management, computers, servers, and copiers. Their program is described on page 8 and 9 of your CIP. The Information Services program accounts for almost 4% of the total capital improvement program. There are 4 sections of the CIP pertinent to the Environment and Public Works Committee, the airport, and 3 divisions of the Department of Environmental Services. The airport has a large program with 27 projects. Their program begins on page 23 of your CIP. 3 new projects are introduced to the CIP in 2022 and 2023 and are funded with 90 to 100% federal dollars. Airport funding amounts and schedules are subject to change as FAA priorities change. The airport program accounts for 12.1% of the total capital program. Moving on to DES. The Pure Waters program begins on page 39. There are 13 projects in Pure Waters CIP this year. The first 4 projects listed, general improvements to the sanitary sewer system in Pure Waters District, are funded with district cash and so will not impact the district's debt service payments. No new Pure Waters projects are introduced in this CIP. The Pure Waters program accounts for 12.8% of the total capital improvement program. The Facilities Management program begins on page 46. There are 12 projects in this program, including 3 new projects this year: Frontier Field Stadium seating and caulking replacement, and City Place electrical and mechanical improvements. These were introduced in the CIP for the 2022 year, while general elevator reconstruction and replacement is introduced for 2023. The facilities program accounts for 9.2% of the total capital program. The solid waste division on page 51 of your CIP accounts for 1.3% of the total capital program. There are no changes in the solid waste program in the recommended CIP as compared to the adopted CIP. I am happy to take questions when you get to this item on your agenda. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gooch. Yes, we will save discussion and questions when we reach this item on the agenda. Our next presenters, William Johnson and Arlene Santiago. I'm not sure if they had to leave early. Are they on, or did they have to leave? If they had to leave, we'll just reschedule this presentation.
Mr. President, it's my understanding, this is Jeff McCann. It's my understanding that they had limited time. They didn't expect this to take as long as it did. So I know that they will be willing to reschedule.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. McCann. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. You have the minutes from the April 27th, 2021 meeting of the Committee of the Whole before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. We will now proceed with new business. Will the clerk read the next item on the agenda?
Item number 1, referral 21-0170, enacting a local law entitled Junior Deer Hunter Pilot Program.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second. Move it, Mr. President.
Legislator, was that Brew?
Alcoffer, I think Alcoffer, Brew, and Hebert.
Alcoffer, Brew, and Hebert. Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President, Legislator Alcoffer.
Someone else wanted a second, I think.
Who else wanted to second that, please?
Legislator Smith, please. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Legislator Smith. Legislator Alcoffer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to say a few words as we introduce this legislation. This legislation would enable our local participation in the state's Junior Deer Hunting Pilot Program. The pilot program, in short, would expand the opportunities for young hunters ages 12 and 13 under the supervision of an experienced adult hunter with at least 3 years of hunting experience to deer hunt with firearms, crossbows, and compound bows in Monroe County. Opting into this program will allow young hunters the ability to gain firsthand knowledge and experience, expanding expertise, safety, and ethics for generations to come. As a lifelong outdoorsman, I know how important and welcome this legislation will be for members of this community. This legislation has widespread support of the New York State Conservation Council, one of the largest and oldest conservation and sporting communities in the state. It has strongly endorsed this program and called for county legislators across the state to opt in. According to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, roughly 700,000 New York State residents and over 50,000 non-residents hunt annually within the Empire State. The program will bring out even greater numbers of local and visiting outdoorsmen and outdoors women and will further prove Monroe County as a destination for all people of all interests and backgrounds. While the state has set the program to expire in 2023, it is my hope that Monroe County's successful participation will lead to its permanent adoption. This legislation is a safe, reasonable, and proper expansion of our current hunting and sporting laws, and I'm proud to join in support of this program and introduce legislation, bring it here to Monroe County. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Legislator Alcoffer. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed? Item carries. Number 2.
Item number 2, referral 21-0171, creating a centralized publicly accessible database of public handicap accessible restrooms and lactation areas throughout Monroe County.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second,
By
Mr. President.
Legislator Turp, seconded by Legislator Dondorfer. Is there any discussion on this?
Legislator Sturp.
Legislator Turp, you have the floor.
Before we vote on this legislation, I would like to briefly say a few words on how a small resource like this can help many in our community. As the usage of e-commerce and convenience services increases with technology at our fingertips, the number of postal workers, delivery drivers, food service workers, and rideshare drivers in our community inevitably increases. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond, these workers have garnered the respect and appreciation of our community. As I went door to door delivering masks, I saw lots of families setting up coffee and snacks set up for these drivers. So they are definitely appreciated. They work tirelessly to fulfill orders and complete their duties through inclement weather, obviously snow here in the Rochester area, and in strenuous shifts, often with little time for a break. In April, I read an article in the Democrat and Chronicle highlighting a common issue that delivery drivers face in our community, and that was the inability to easily access something as simple as a restroom. As it currently stands, the standard for restaurants, gas stations, convenience stores, it is generally a requirement to purchase food or items, some that drivers may not need or want. Monroe County operates dozens of restrooms, handicap restrooms, and lactation rooms for new mothers. While the availability of these public restrooms resources is abundant, accessibility to finding them without knowing their exact location, and especially hours of operation, is difficult. By creating an easily accessible public database of these county facilities, delivery drivers and other automobile-based employees can easily learn when and where these accommodations can be found. Establishing this restroom and lactation facilities database is a small additional service that will assist everyone in our community, those driving or those just walking around throughout parks, especially those who work long and demanding shifts on the road. Thank you for your consideration for this legislation.
Thank you, too. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. President.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Legislator Barr. I have a couple of questions for the maker of the motion, just because I'm a little confused about what's already on the books and what isn't. It's my understanding that currently under state law that women can use any public building, bathroom, lactation room, etc., per New York State law. What does this do that's different? I mean, right now it means any public building, right? So how does this database, I mean, what's not being included that needs to be added to this database, if you see what I'm saying? Through the president.
Yep, through the president. That's a great question. This isn't adding anything that people can already use. What I realized as I learned about this story is there are so many bathrooms that people can easily assess. The problem is that they don't know where they are or their hours of operation. So this database will put all of that information in one area where hopefully somebody will be able to put in where they currently are, and then they will be given bathrooms and lactation centers around their area to find out the easiest path to relieve themselves.
Okay. So then through the president, and thank you very much, and that makes sense because I was trying to understand, what the add-on was. In this case, the add-on is information. And so my question then is, through the president to the administration, is the administration doing something like this already, or is it aware of other ways that this is already being done through the president?
Through you, Mr. President, we looked into this briefly. And again, my understanding, the intent of this referral would be for us to have an app that would just list county locations, which, as you know, looking at the broad community, there wouldn't be that many facilities located. There are apps there now that have locations of toilet facilities. I know our research has shown that there's an app called Flush that has separate public bathrooms and toilets. The toilet paper brand Charmin has something called Sit or Squat that is an app that lists over 100,000 bathrooms. Also, another app that's called Room Scout, which we believe is the biggest app serving this market, and that has 1.3 million toilets and bathrooms, and that is all over the world for that. Also, we've looked at this a little bit in terms of the lactation facilities, and there is another app, I believe it's pronounced MamaVa, M-A-M-A. That app is crowdsourced, and there's an opportunity for people to put sites down locally in their community, and we looked at that quickly, and I believe our facility showed up on that. I believe there's one at City Hall, Strong Museum. There may have been others, but there are some apps that have been done by the private sector, and also if you,
Could everybody
I
please
believe
mute
if you
their
Google,
microphones that's not on the floor, doesn't have the floor, because there's a lot of background noise and we're having trouble hearing. So everybody, if you don't have the floor, please mute your microphone. Sorry, Mr. McCann. I just wanted you to be clear.
Sure. So there are for the lactation sites as well. There are a number of private apps that are available and do this. And also, what I was going to say is, if I believe if you Google or do some type of search in a web browser that has the location enabled, that might be another existing possibility.
I have a question. When you looked into these, like you said briefly, when those locations for the bathrooms are listed, do you know if they're public access or are they just bathrooms that are in buildings that exist?
Through you, Mr. President, they are listed as whether or not they're in a public facility and usable to the public.
Thank you.
So thank you much for the response, Mr. McCann. So again, through the president, this time to the maker of the motion, is it the intent of this referral or local law to go beyond the public buildings that we already know are accessible by law, or is just for the public buildings? Through the president.
Through the president, I mean, public buildings, park locations, anything that's currently accessible. I had a question today. Would it be all buildings that's not publicly accessible? Like, would it be a maintenance building or a fleet building, that kind of stuff? No, that would not be it. It would be all the public buildings that are currently available. And just to clarify, I have looked at some of those apps doing research, and some problem with those apps, especially with county parks and county-run organizations or government-run organizations, is depending on the time of year. These, let's say a park actually would have different hours in summertime compared to winter. And so a lot of these different apps and or sites don't have accurate information based upon the time of year, based upon maintenance being done. So this obviously would be firsthand information coming right from the county on our own bathrooms and lactation centers, whether or not they're handicap accessible, whether they're not, whether they're down for maintenance. So making sure people have accurate information is obviously key. And a lot of these apps don't have 100% accuracy.
Thank you. So I guess, and this is to, I'm not going to say explain my vote, but to converse with Legislator Tripp a little bit, but through the president, of course, is that what you're describing, though, is basically there's a market out there where they have professionals marketing, their products. So Flush, which I think is someone spent some money to learn, come up with that title for a app. But they're spending a lot of effort to advertise their information, whereas the county is not in a position really to do that, unless you would think it's acceptable that the county would simply provide that sort of updated information to the vendors of Flush and others. But then I guess my question for you would be, is that something you would consider reasonable, or is that something that you wouldn't? And then my concern would be, if you do share information with one app, wouldn't you have to share it with all? I mean, I'd hate to create something that no one ever looks at, if you see what I'm saying. Do you have any thoughts on that, let's say, Trev, through the president?
Yeah, through the president, that's a great stance, a great comment. I would hope what we would be able to do is, by creating our database of accurate information about restrooms, hours, location, handicap accessible lactation centers, is we would put it all in one area and then give that information out to these apps. So we don't have to create our own app. Again, I think creating an app costs a lot of money. My goal is not to spend an excessive amount of money. It's just creating a specific resource or a website that people can go to know these bathrooms and areas that are already accessible to them. But if we actually create and continuously make sure we have the accurate information, we can share this information with the apps to make sure that if somebody goes to our website, they have it, or if they go to the apps, it is updated information from our website that they're getting accurate information in ours. So I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think it definitely can be both, and they can use the resource of the apps or our website, again, for accurate information, because nobody wants to, I mean, we're talking about going to the bathroom or relieving yourself. Nobody wants to go to a bathroom, get there, and then have it be locked because the hours of operation were not correct because it's winter compared to summer. And my goal is to have accurate information to make sure that people are able to use these facilities when they need it.
Okay. So following up on that, through the president to the administration, Does the administration already have a listing of publicly available lactation rooms, bathrooms, etc., someplace? And I think I said through the president.
That question is to the administration.
Yes.
Is there a list? I just want to know if they heard it.
Yes, yes, Mr. President. I'm sorry, I did hear that. I had to check here. I believe that we do have a list that is kept by Human Resources. I believe that's the case.
Thank you, Mr. McKenna. So, I'm sorry?
Human Resources well, he said he believes it. He believes that there's a list on Human Resources. Is there somebody from Human Resources that could verify if they do have a list? Or are you satisfied with that answer, Legislator Burra?
Well, Mr. President, I actually am satisfied with the answer. I mean, if we figure there's information is there, I guess then the real thing is just making the whether or not that information is being publicized someplace and who would actually see it. So I had another question through the president for the administration regarding if we were to share information with one app, like my personal favorite, Flush, would we have to then share information with other apps as well, or are there legal conundrums around that? Is my question through the president.
Through you, Mr. President. I don't know that there would be a burden on us to share the information. I believe my understanding is that it's quite common for sites like this to work by being crowdsourced, so that users of them often populate the sites with information in their communities.
Okay, so then I guess to the maker of the motion, thank you, Mr. McCann, to the maker of the motion through the president, what would you think of the suggestion that we delay this? I hate to say the word table because it has such a bad connotation. Delay this a little bit. Instead, perhaps we can say not that the county actually creates such a list and advertise it, but the county ensures that such a list is shared with vendors, et cetera, and advertises it if appropriate, because I think those vendors are going to have much greater reach than the county website. So through the president to the maker of the motion, what do you think of that possibility?
All right, through the president, repeat that suggestion one more time.
Well, I don't have your exact language in front of me, but basically, instead of saying that the county must create a database to be shared regarding lactation and bathrooms and other public spaces, but the county makes a data available to outside. I don't want to use the word vendors because some of them are free, right? Outside apps, programs, something outside agencies, outside entities, about information of our availability of these factors, because they're going to have much wider purview, much wider marketing ability than we will. It doesn't mean we can't add to the website. I think we can, but finding anything on the website is kind of challenging. And would you be amenable to this idea?
I think that would be a good in addition to. I mean, my goal is to have people go through the president is to go to the county website and go to us to get this information. They can also learn a lot more about the parks, and we can have other different things on there about the amenities and everything. So my goal would be to try to get people to come to the county website, come to the county app instead of sending them to a third party. So I think we can do both. I mean, we have to get all this information in one place anyways. So why not have us build the site where all this information is? Because you can get this information by looking here, looking there, like the administration said, calling the resource department, but having it all in one site, one page, run by the county, because a lot of these apps are crowdsourced and not accurate. So I think we can do both. I think the first step would be actually creating this database for the county to have, and then trying to make sure that accurate information is given to these apps would be step number 2.
Okay. Well, my thought is that, I think we're pretty much on the same page. I'm sorry.
What is that sound? Mr. President, what is that sound that keeps coming in like a wash? I don't know. What is it? It's very irritating.
I don't know, I might be right, but Legislator Baroff, the paper behind you keeps on flying. Do you have a fan on, maybe?
I do. Maybe that is an issue. 1 second. Did that resolve the situation?
I hope so.
We'll see.
Not to be out of turn, but sorry, Legislator Felder, is that better?
I don't hear it anymore, so maybe that was it. Thank you.
Okay, well, if so, I apologize. So anyhow, I was through the president in regards to speaking with Legislator Turp. What I would suggest is perhaps we can get together and work out some language that does both of this stuff in one thing rather than trying to introduce amendments to it right now. Could we possibly do that? And it's not taking a little time anyhow.
Legislator, to the president, what's nice is we're just in committees. So we're not actually voting on it in full legislature right now. So if you would like to discuss this further, I would suggest that we pass it right now in committees. And then if we want to put some extra language in it, we have that option to it, because it's not like it's a local law and would have to be vetted for a certain amount of time. If there was something to make it better, which I'm all for, if we can make it better and more accessible to more and more people, that would be great. But I would suggest we pass it now in committees. And then if you want to have if any legislators want to have a discussion, try to make this better, I am all for that.
Okay, then you know what? I think that's quite reasonable. One question for Mr. President, and forgive me, I just don't recall offhand. When is the next full legislature meeting? I'm sorry. Is
June 8th.
June 8th. So that gives us about 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Legislator Turp, can we make this work in 2 weeks, you think? Through the president?
I don't see why not.
Okay, then I'll reach out to you offline through the president, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, and by the way, before I give up the floor, which I will, that's okay. I just want to point out that this is sort of conversation that we should be having more often, like on another, not to be repeated, thing that we had in the committee of the full legislative meeting. I'm just demonstrating we can actually do this. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Anyone else? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 3, referral 21-0172, amending the Dignified Indigent Burial Act of 2021 to increase the maximum qualifying funeral cost threshold for the Supplemental Funeral Assistance Program.
Move it.
Moved by Legislator Felder, seconded by Legislator Flagler Mitchell. Is there any discussion on this?
I'll speak.
Okay, Legislator Felder, you have the floor.
Sorry.
Legislator Felder.
We had a big discussion about what represents an indigent burial, and when that just came up before. And out of my personal experience, when my brother passed away, we had to bury him. He didn't have insurance, and we had a no frills funeral and burial, and it cost $10,000. There wasn't no horse-drawn carriages. We didn't release doves into the sky. Didn't even have limousines, and it cost $10,000. And so, it seems to me it's a reasonable amount for a threshold. And some people won't get there, but that is not an unreasonable threshold for a burial that's considered indigent, because there was nothing to the funeral other than we had a service. In fact, we had to wake in the funeral the same day, and we buried him, and that was that. We had a casket, and that was that, and it cost $10,000. So that's the basis for this.
Thank you, Legislator Hebert.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, probably to the administration. Currently, if an individual dies with COVID-19 as the cause of death, FEMA is reimbursing 100% of the costs. Does Monroe County currently ensure that FEMA funds are used prior to using any county funds in these cases?
Mr. President, Robert Franklin, County Finance. The application process for FEMA is quite arduous. Even once you get through that process, it is a reimbursement, and quite frankly, it could take in excess of 1 year for the county to see that reimbursement. So we are not actually going through that process, Mr. President.
As a follow-up question, Mr. Franklin, so we are not pursuing the funds that FEMA is making, and I became aware of this when a gentleman my wife cares for died, and the funeral home was promptly notifying us that we could get 100% reimbursement from FEMA. Obviously driving up, hoping that we would do more for the gentleman. So the county is passing up those funds at this point based on your response?
Mr. President, I'm sure the funeral home directors are more than happy to provide that advice, that FEMA reimbursement is available as a means to entice those mourning a loved one to spend more money.
Right.
But the answer, Mr. President, is the county is not pursuing FEMA reimbursement for the cost of burials.
So conceivably, individuals receiving county funding could then themselves put in for FEMA funding and receive essentially double payment, county and FEMA money.
Mr. President, I can't comment or offer advice on individual applications for FEMA.
Is there anybody else in the administration could respond to that, Mr. McCann?
Through the president.
Through the president, I'm sorry.
Through you, Mr. President, no, Mr. Franklin is our subject area expert on that.
I have a question. Could somebody individually apply to FEMA
Yes.
for the money?
Legislator Hebert here, yes, because we did, because my family paid for it and we have applied to FEMA for reimbursement. So
How long have you waited?
Well, I mean, the death was May 8th, so we have not waited long.
So theoretically, I mean, I'm just thinking this out. If somebody applied to FEMA for full reimbursement due to a COVID death, they wouldn't be applying to the county for more money.
Sure they would. If the county's just giving it to them, they could through you, Mr. President. I believe that somebody who has someone pass away at this time and it's determined to be a COVID death, they are clearly eligible for FEMA reimbursement. If during the process of, and it's reimbursement, if during the process of the funeral, the county pays for the funeral, I could still apply. And when the check comes in, it's mine.
Well, maybe, Mr. Franklin, maybe if someone applied to the county for money for a funeral, if you determined the cause of death was COVID, you could advise the people to apply to FEMA. Would that be feasible, Mr. Franklin?
Mr. President, Monroe County's payments for burials are made to the funeral home, not to the decedent's family or friends. Most FEMA applications are for reimbursement of costs. The applicant, the family member or friend who is arranging for the burial of their loved one would have to provide documentation to FEMA that they actually incurred the cost. If the funeral home is receiving payment directly from Monroe County, I'm not sure how the family member would go about providing such documentation since they did not themselves incur that cost.
No, what I'm saying was, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm just thinking out loud, if the cause of death was COVID, then the county would not give them any money because the county would be advising them to get the money from FEMA.
Excuse me, Mr. President. Legislator Felder.
Well, let's see if that made sense to Mr. Franklin first.
Mr. President, I do understand your perspective, and it has been quite a long time since I worked for the Department of Human Services, but this would be an application for public assistance, whether the TANF program or the Safety Net program, and frankly, my time away from Human Services leaves me unable to answer the question of whether we can refer an applicant for public assistance to another federal program.
Fair enough. Legislator Felder.
Mr. President, I think
Unless, Legislator Hebert.
Just
he's
a
not-
quick point.
sorry.
The may answer Legislator Hebert's question. I
Is that
believe
okay,
that.
Legislator Hebert?
Well, I just had one quick request of the administration, which was, since it appears that there may be an opportunity for a fraudulent situation here, could I request that the administration check into it and report back to us every couple weeks on their progress? Through you, Mr. President.
Okay, the request has been made. Is the administration aware of it?
Mr. President, if you can give us a moment, please.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, through you, Legislator Hebert, if it would be possible, we would request if we could have that request in writing, that would help us track it down and pass it along to the appropriate people in Human Services and help us get a response to that.
You are
Perfect. Is that okay, Legislator Hebert?
Yeah, we can do that. Thank you. I yield.
Okay, Legislator Felder, you're up.
No, I'm just going to say very quickly. I believe that FEMA program is a reimbursement program. I don't think it's a direct payment program. So I think you have to pay for the funeral and then get reimbursed.
That's correct.
Because normal timetable, somebody passes away, then in 2 weeks you have the funeral. There's not time for a federal program to wind money through a system like that. That's very unusual. So I'm fairly certain that that is a reimbursement program and not a direct payment program.
Legislator Hebert.
Go ahead, Legislator Hebert.
Thank you. Just responding, Legislator Felder is absolutely correct. It is a reimbursement program, so it would not be appropriate to pay for the funeral. But what my concern is that the county pays, and then someone applies to FEMA, an individual, not the county, and by so doing, they get a check back, and it's a fraudulent check. And I'd like to see if there's something we can do to avoid that if it's happening. I yield the floor.
Okay. Any further
Legislator
discussion
Roman?
on this?
Legislator Roman.
Oh, okay, Legislator Roman.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you, Mr. President. To the makers of this particular referral. So through reading it, understanding is that just the amount in which someone qualifies to receive this benefit is being increased, right? So this is just allowing more people to qualify for support.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Right, Legislator Felder?
I didn't hear the question. Can Mr. President, can you state it again?
By raising the limit, it allows more people to qualify for the aid.
In theory, yes.
Theory. It does.
I mean, yeah.
Through you, Mr. President, through the maker of the referral, this is not increasing the amount of money that individual families will get. This is just allowing other families to qualify for money, correct?
You, Mr. President, that is correct.
Okay. And do we know that indigent burials are at the $10,000? I mean, is that still considered an indigent burial? Through you, Mr. President.
To the maker or to anyone?
To the maker.
Let me say this about to you, Mr. President. An indigent burial has to do with the resources of the person who has to pay for the burial, not the cost of the burial. And basically, nobody's going to go out and try to have a funeral they can't afford to pay for if they have resources. So what we're saying is there are times, depending on the situation, where it may cost that much to bury someone. And so in those instances, those people will still be eligible for assistance. Does that answer the question?
Through you, Mr. President, to a certain extent. So what I'm understanding is that we are increasing the amount of dollars that can be spent on a funeral to qualify, but we're not giving families more money. I'm just asking this question because this was an amendment that I had asked for a few months ago. So I'm just understanding, right, that.
Well, as a correction, the amendment was asked. Just correction, the amendment that was asked for before was, I think, was $7,000. So this is 10. So it's not the same thing.
Through you, Mr. President. No, it's not. It's actually, I would say, more unequal, right? So we are saying that more families can qualify, but we're giving them less money. I just wanted to point that out as I continue to see, us not really asking questions about what's happening. But thank you so much. And of course, I believe more families should be qualified if this is still considered an indigent burial. But thank you for some clarity.
Mr. President, that was a ridiculous comment by Legislator Roman. See, went out and put a statement out that when the last legislation was passed that we denied an amendment that would have given people more money, which is not true because the amount was staying at $2,000. The amount was only be $2,000, and she wanted $7,000 to be the threshold. Now we're going to 10. Now she's trying to claim that somehow we're giving more people money but giving them less. No, we're not giving them less money. We're giving them the same amount. If the funeral costs $10,000, it costs $5,000, it costs $8,000, they're getting $2,000.
Through you, Mr. President.
That's not a hard thing to understand. It's basic math. I don't get it.
Through you, Mr. President, I agree. It is basic math, and I would welcome Legislator Felter to go back and to review what was submitted previously in regards to this particular piece of legislation. In general, I welcome the conversation. I welcome it to be honest and trust, that we are asking the questions. I'll continue to say, right, we should be asking questions. This was a topic that, yes, was discussed before. And there were comments in regards to the $10,000 threshold. I'm not sure what is different. Maybe we're being sold differently, but it is exactly the conversation we had a few months ago. But thank you.
Any further discussion on this?
So glad
Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 4, referral 21-0173, amend the 2021 operating budget to transfer appropriations from the Legislature's Community Contingency Fund to the Department of Human Services Youth Bureau for the Crisis Nursery of Greater Rochester.
Move it, Mr. President.
By Legislator Smith, seconded by Legislator Delahanty.
Hasman too.
And Hasman, and Legislator Hasman. Sorry, Legislator
And Barra.
Hasman. And Barra. Anyone else?
Legislator Smith.
Seconded too.
Oh, are we still seconding? I'm sorry.
That's okay. Legislator Boyce seconded that also.
Okay, got it. Mr. President, can I make a comment, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Unexpected crises happens for families in our community every single day.
Excuse me.
Medical issues, domestic violence.
Hasman,
Yes.
the mover has the floor first. Legislator Smith.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Legislator Hasman for bringing this referral forth to us. I appreciate the time taken to look into the information. The Crisis Nursery of Greater Rochester is a great service we provide to the residents of Monroe County. We're incredibly lucky to have this program in our community and as a program that is supported across the board. I do support this referral, though I do have a few questions around the fiscal diligence of the request. Through the president to the administration or the maker of the referral, in the referral, it's stated the nursery has been subject to gaps in coverage, hurting the availability of services. Can you explain further what is causing the gaps in coverage?
This is Legislator Hasman. What I was going to say is that families in our area experience crises every day. With that in mind, what I would like to do is refer this to the administration and make a motion to do that so we can explore more ways to help families in need in our community.
Second.
It's not properly a motion. It's a power delegated to the president to make a referral. So it wouldn't be proper to be a motion. It's up to you if you want to refer.
Are we muted?
He does it all the time.
Okay, I'll allow that. We'll refer it to the administration.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Next item.
Next item.
Item number 5, referral 21-0175, authorize a contract with CHA Consulting, Inc. for an environmental assessment pursuant to the National Environmental Policy Act for obstruction removal for runway 4 at the Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport.
Move, Mr. President.
Seconded by Legislator Dondorfer, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 6, referral 21-0176, acceptance of a municipal waste reduction and recycling grant in aid from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation for municipal waste reduction and/or recycling project.
Move it, Mr. President.
By Legislator Dondorfer, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion on this?
Mr. President, Legislator Barth.
Yes, Legislator Barroth.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the administration, in terms of the education piece of all this, do we have a particular target audience? I mean, is it residential groups, industry, community-wide? Do we have a target through the president?
Through you, Mr. President, this is Mike Garland from DES. We've got a wide variety of audiences whom we direct our public education outreach to, primarily schools, and we expect in the fall that we'll have a greater demand for presentations at classrooms. We also have scouting and community events, summer library programs. Certainly festivals are a great opportunity for us to share information. Obviously, that will be somewhat limited this year, but we look for every opportunity that we can to share information regarding recycling right. This year so far, we have done a number of virtual education programs, but we expect we'll be doing more in person this summer and into the fall.
Thank you, sir. I do want to say that, I mean, I was a personal beneficiary of those educational programs in that when I was a Cub master, we brought in some of the recycling educators and to speak to the Cubs. But the one thing I wanted to make sure to ask about, beyond reaching out to individual people or consumers or residents, is there a component aimed at the business community or the industrial community through the president?
Through Mr. President, through the Recycling Advisory Committee is where we have representatives from the business, commercial, industrial community. So we really have a direct line of communication with them, and they're able to share that information with them as well. Certainly our website does have information that can be downloaded for whether it's a commercial, industrial, or academic setting for recycling information, whether it's key cards or posters that could be displayed near recycling bins. But we also obviously have a lot of online communication, whether it's emails or through social media as well too.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Very good. Any further discussion on this? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Number 7.
Item number 7, referral 21-0177, classification of action, determination of significance pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act for the Specialized Secure Detention Facility Project, Phase 2.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by legislator Dondorfer, seconded by legislator Wilt. Is there any discussion on this?
Yes, Mr. President, Legislator Dondorfer.
Yes, legislator Dondorfer, you have the floor.
Through you, Mr. President, to the administration, what's the magnitude of the fluctuation in the number of people in this facility?
So on the classification.
Through you, Mr. President, of late, we've been close to full capacity, which is 31.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 8, referral 21-0178, amend the 2021 capital budget and bond resolution 189 of 2018 to provide an increase in funding for specialized secure detention facility project and authorize contracts with the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York.
Move, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by legislator Dondorfer, seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next, number 9.
Item number 9, referral 21-0179, amend the 2021 to 2026 capital improvement program in the 2021 capital budget to add a project entitled Iola Combined Heat and Power Plant Improvement and authorize financing for the project, and amend bond resolution 306 of 2019 to provide a decrease in funding for the project entitled Monroe Community Hospital Physical Plant.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by legislator Dondorfer, seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, Legislator Dondorfer.
Legislator Dondorfer.
Through you to the administration, how will this project plan to be financed prior to this recommended change, and how will it be financed now? Basically, what will the $2 million plus be used for?
Mr. President, Robert Franklin, Monroe County Finance. We do have DES managers on the line, and they can tag team this response. But the question was regarding financing. This is actually creating a new capital project, and that's essentially replacing an old. So this, the prior project was construction of a chiller plant at MCH. The way the project was written and authorized for bonding was very specific to the chiller plant at MCH. This project is a little different in terms of the utilities to be provided and how those utilities are being provided to MCH. So it seemed more appropriate from a local finance law perspective to essentially abandon the old project and create this new project. Both projects would have been bond financed. Our DES staff and management team on the line can respond to just the details of how this project is different from the original.
To you, Mr. President, this is Mike Garland, picking up where Director Franklin left off. As you may recall, the original project was conceived to be located on the MCH campus, and it was called the Monroe Community Hospital Physical Plant Project. Concept there was we would create new boilers, new switchgear, new transformers, a larger building, all of which would supply heat and power to the hospital. It also included replacing an electric chiller within the hospital as well too. We were advancing that project as it relates to the electric chiller. and that project's been completed. We've also done design and evaluation, and what we concluded was that building a new physical plant on the MCH campus was very costly, and that we reevaluated the existing equipment located at Iola across the street, and the boilers have a significant period of useful life remaining, about approximately 20 years. The cabling and switch gear there is well. I should say it's in good working condition. It's very reliable. So we've developed a project that would utilize the existing boilers, which the county owns, again, at the Iola location, the existing facility, as well as the existing electrical switchgear, transformers, and cabling. And we've concluded that it is reliable for a minimum of 20-year life. So we'll rehabilitate the tunnel that's underneath East Henrietta Road from Iola to MCH. So as Director Franklin had mentioned, we've changed the scope of the project to what we believe will be a more appropriate use of capital funding.
Great, thank you very much.
Any further discussion on this?
Legislator Brew.
Legislator Brew.
Yes, through you, Mr. President, to administration. So my question to DES or the administration, I'm just curious if the rapid increase in pricing may have played a role in changing the course of action at MCH and not building or expanding the existing size of the plant that was designated to house the new gear. Just that question, if I may.
Through Mr. President, Mike Garland again. The estimate that we had was pre-COVID. So to the question that was asked by Legislator Brew, no, the escalation that we're currently seeing with materials is not part of the costs associated with our prior evaluation.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Great. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Them carries. Next item.
Item number 10, referral 21-0180, classification of action, determination of significance pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act for the increase and improvement of facilities in the Rochester Pure Waters District, Frank E. Van Laer wastewater treatment plant electrical system improvements.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by Legislator Dondorfer, seconded by Legislator Wilt. Is there any discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 11, referral 21-0181, increase and improvement of facilities in the Rochester Pure Waters District, Frank E. Van Laer wastewater treatment plant electrical system improvement, and amend the 2021 capital budget and bond resolution 280 of 2019 to provide an additional increase in funding.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second. By Legislator Dondorfer, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion on this?
Yes, Mr. President. Sorry, go ahead, George.
Legislator Hebert.
Go ahead, Legislator Hebert.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, to the administration, do we have any idea what percentage of the cost of this project is related to construction materials as opposed to labor and everything else?
Through you, Mr. President, give us just one moment. Through Mr. President, we estimate the value of equipment materials for this project to be about 30% of the total project cost.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, to Mr. Garland, what would be the ramifications if this project was delayed until materials are cheaper? Everybody is pretty aware that construction materials and equipments are getting premiums now. So I'm just wondering if it makes any sense to delay the project since it was already delayed once.
Through you, Mr. President, we anticipated long lead time equipment and pre-purchased that. That's the medium voltage switchgear, the automatic switchgear control system, the substation transformers, and the programmable logic controllers. So we have price certainty on those pieces of equipment. There'll be obviously other elements to the project like cabling and building materials and other elements associated with the project itself. But this is a substation, if you will, that allows RG&E power to be stepped down and usable within the plant to power Van Laer. It's probably the last major upgrade that we have of existing facilities at Van Laer. It's approximately 50 years old, and the risk with not replacing this presently would be potential for significant power failures and the inability to operate the plant.
Thank you. One last question through you, Mr. President. So the delay that occurred, I believe it was from 2020 to this year, we were exposed to those power failures as well?
Through you, Mr. President, there were power failures that related to RG&E service to us. We have been able to maintain the equipment in a working and reliable manner. My concern would be we want to advance this project now and not have any additional delays associated with it.
Thank you, Mr. Garland. I will yield the floor, Mr. President.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Carries. Next.
Item number 12, referral 21-0183, authorize a contract with Healthcare Support Advisors, Inc. for reimbursement to Monroe County Sheriff's Office to conduct criminal background checks on HCSA members' potential employees.
Move it, Mr. President.
Legislator Boyce, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Legislator Boyce.
Go ahead, Legislator Boyce, you have the floor.
Yes, through the President. Can the Sheriff's Department let us know how they will determine the cost per unit of doing these background checks?
Through you, Mr. President, I believe Mr. Simonelli and or Mr. Hinckley is available.
It's Kim Hinckley, counsel for the sheriff. Could you please repeat that?
Yes, through the President, Mr. Hinckley, can you tell us how you will determine the cost per unit of doing the background checks? Would it be a flat rate, or will it be depending on how intricate the background check will be?
No, to the administration, or to the chair, it's a flat rate per background check.
And what is that rate per?
I would have to get back to you on that. I don't have that available.
Well, that would be helpful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Any further discussion? None, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. 13, I believe. Mr. Clerk?
Yep. Item number 13, referral 21-0184, adopt 2022 to 2027 capital improvement program.
Move it, Mr. President.
Move it.
Who was that? Moved it?
Second.
Moved by, should have been Legislator Dondorf.
Moved by Legislator Dondorfer, seconded by Legislators Boyce, Wilt, Alcoffer, Ansello, Colby, Smith, and Delahanty. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 14, referral 21-0185, classification of action, determination of significance pursuant to State Environmental Quality Review Act for the Glendale Road Sidewalk Project funded through the Monroe County Community Development Block Grant Program.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by Legislator Smith, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 15, referral 21-0186, classification of action, determination of significance pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act for the First-Time Home Buyers Program funded through the Monroe County Home Investment Partnerships Program.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by Legislator Dondorfer, seconded by Legislator Wilt. Is there any discussion?
Yes. Through the President, Mr. Legislator Boyce.
Go ahead, Legislator Boyce.
Can somebody provide more information with regards to this referral? I mean, just in general, what's the?
I'm sorry, through you, Mr. President, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, Legislator Boyce, you broke up a little bit. I don't think they heard you.
All right, through the President, I just wanted a general, overview of what the goal of this project was. Through the President.
Through you, Mr. President, Pat Gooch is available to talk about this.
No.
I'm sorry, actually Chan Kwa, I apologize.
This is Director Anna Liss of the Planning and Development Department. Chan Kwa, our Community Development Manager, will answer the question for Jeff McCann.
Through you, Mr. President, the funding, the direct subsidy would be for closing costs or down payment assistance for income-eligible first-time home buyers who are purchasing homes in suburban Monroe County.
Okay, the follow-up question, Ms. Kwan. Can you tell us what are the requirements to qualify for these funds? Is it based on income solely or any other qualifications?
Through you, Mr. President, the Housing Council, it reviews each applicant. They have to attend pre and post counseling. Also, they have to save for the purchase for their match portion, and also take various classes related to preparing for purchasing their first home. The program is actually subcontracted to the Housing Council at Pathstone.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 16, referral 21-0187, classification of action, determination of significance pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act for the acquisition, rehab, resale program funded through the Monroe County Home Investment Partnership Program.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by Legislator Dondorfer, seconded by Legislator Wilt. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 17, referral 21-0188, 2021 Annual Action Plan for Housing and Community Development in Suburban Monroe County and grant submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by Legislator Wilt, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion on this?
Legislator Hebert.
Legislator Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the administration, how much funding is being carried over? That was mentioned in the document.
Mr. President, we have Anna Liss and Rebecca Case-Keiko available to address that.
Through you, Mr. President, this is Anna Liss. Actually, Chan Kwa, our Community Development Manager, can answer the question about this item.
Through you, Mr. President, the projects from last year's funding were already allocated. We're not carrying anything over.
Okay. Through you, Mr. President, what towns and villages participate in these programs?
It's actually, through you, Mr. President, the funding is for all of the towns and villages in suburban Monroe County for all of our home funding. CDBG funding does not include Greece and Irondequoit or the city.
Okay. And last question, Mr. President, through you to the administration, what's the approval process for grant awards?
Through you, Mr. President, the municipal projects and public services applications and ESG applications, each applicant would submit an application for review. Municipal projects are funded based on their project readiness, and then public service projects are funded for those that serve low-income seniors, individuals, families, and so individuals with disabilities, all in suburban Monroe County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Legislator DeFlorio.
Legislator DeFlorio, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through the chair, or sorry, through the president to the administration, could you tell me how the program, and specifically I'm looking at the home improvement program is communicated or advertised, for lack of a better descriptor, out to our communities? I've given the information out to people when I've found out that they're in need, but so many people that I've spoken with have never heard of the program.
Through you, Mr. President, we have sent notices, applications, and updated information to our municipal partners. We have been out to senior centers to do presentations on the program, and sent them to various public information areas where potential applicants may attend or may be present at. We've also worked with our assessors for each of the municipalities to share this information when they go out to talk to homeowners. And it's also on the county website.
Thank you. And I guess just as a follow-up question, I'm sorry, I'm not sure where I was going with that. Thank you. If I think of it, I'll.
If you think of it, Legislator DeFlorio will give you back the floor.
Thank you. I had it and then I lost it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 18, referral 21-0189, authorizing intermunicipal agreements for vacant and zombie property management.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by Legislator Ansello, seconded by Legislator Smith. Is there any discussion on this?
Yes.
Legislator Barra.
Legislator Barra, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I'm always excited about saving money. I particularly like the fact that if we save money, we get a grant.
Legislator Barth, I made another mistake. Legislator Smith seconded. She has the floor first. Sorry.
That's okay.
Legislator Smith. You're muted. Legislator Smith?
Through the president, to the administration, do we anticipate reducing costs? And if so, how much?
Mr. President, let me try this again here. We have Anna Liss and Rebecca Case-Keiko available to answer that.
Through you, Mr. President, this is Anna Liss. Rebecca Case-Keiko is here with me. She's our Deputy Director of Planning and Development.
Hi, through the President, thank you for the question. We are anticipating the ability to reduce costs. The purpose of this really is to share resources as municipalities request to enable better and more efficient maintenance of vacant properties. At this point, we don't have a cost for you. We potentially could provide an estimated cost if so desired.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that would be great to get an estimated cost and then an actual cost when that is done. Through the president to the administration, the referral mentions match savings through grant funds. How will such matching grant funds be distributed between the involved parties?
Through the President, that's through the Shared Services Program. It is a state fund. It is a state program that allows municipalities to seek a matching grant, essentially, for savings that have been acquired through the Shared Services Program. I have some estimations as to the cost of that we have submitted to the state. I just don't happen to have that in front of me at the moment. But certainly, if that is accomplished, we would certainly seek that back from the state.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Legislator Hebert.
No, Legislator Baroff.
Legislator Baroff first. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of follow-up questions. First, I just want to say I'm always excited about, efforts to save money by cooperation. I know that's something the county has done for a while now. Two questions. Through the President to the administration, the cost savings are not just for the county, but the reimbursement will also reimburse the cost savings achieved by different municipalities. Is that correct, through the President?
Through the President, that is correct.
Thank you. And through the President to the administration, are those cost-saving reimbursements going through the county? So if Brighton saves $20,000, the county would get it and then give it to Brighton?
It's unclear at this point where the channel of funding would flow, but ultimately the county reimburses the municipalities, and so that funding would be funded through the state if we were successful in getting the shared services grant.
Okay, thank you. And one final question. Through the President to the administration, when do we anticipate these agreements to actually go into effect?
Right now, the agreements aren't in place. This is simply a vehicle to allow ideas and sharing of services as they may pop up or requested.
Okay, and then one final question. Then, does that mean then, through the President, that the window of opportunity for these agreements ends at a certain period in time? And if so, when is that end point to have an agreement in place?
In order to request reimbursement or the funding through the shared services, those agreements would have to be in place and money would have to have been saved by the end of this year.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Legislator Hebert.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up question through you, Mr. President, the administration, Ms. Liss and in there. In the event that where there is money saved, what I'm trying to figure out is how are you determining what share the county gets versus what share a town or a village or whatever gets?
The difference in cost is what they previously would have expended versus the savings now because of the agreements.
Through you, Mr. President, I fully understand how that program works. I've been through several briefings on it. My question is, are we going to know in advance what shares of any state reimbursements are going to which parties? Or, I mean, I'm trying to avoid a fight between us and the towns, or make sure there isn't the opportunity for one.
through the president, this is Laura Smith, Chief Deputy County Attorney. If there's any savings realized through the shared services plan, those savings would have to be certified by the individual municipalities. The state would then match those grants in the funds. Match those funds in grants. So we would have the numbers from the municipality showing how much money they saved, and then that's what would be matched from the state.
All right, thank you. I yield the floor.
Legislator Boyce.
Legislator Boyce?
Yes, a question to, through the president to Ms. Liss. Is this referral going to have the municipalities disclose as to what the zombie properties are within the municipality so that the public knows? In particular, I know there's homes throughout our county that are abandoned or referred to as zombie properties, and I know a lot of people are concerned about those within their municipalities, and however, we don't know what, as a general public, and even as a legislator, I don't know what's going on with those properties.
Through you, Mr. President, Rebecca Keiko, Deputy Director, can answer that question.
Through you, Mr. President, the intermunicipal agreement that is being proposed has no requirements to disclose the location of any vacant properties.
So, follow-up question then, how do we know then, I guess, as legislators, what properties are being taken care of? Is there going to be a report that's going to be available? Like I said, we see a lot of abandoned properties. We don't know what's going on with them and if, how they're being taken care of.
We, on a regular basis, the county and the towns are required to maintain vacant properties that are on their list to maintain. And as those properties are maintained and purchases are made to support that that property, receipts can be generated that will offer evidence as to which ones have been supported jointly.
I can tell you, through the president, my own personal, I've seen properties within my district that are not being maintained by the municipality, and people ask all the time, why is that house such a mess? I certainly wonder if this should be something that should be created, a database, so that the public knows how these things are taking, having a progress on them.
Through you, Mr. President, was that a question for planning and development, or was that a comment?
Through the president, it was I guess I'm out of frustration, it's a comment, and I'm wondering, was that a database maybe that was created a while back that isn't being maintained at the county clerk's office?
Through you, Mr. President, there is no such database that offers a listing of vacant properties for the county.
All right, well, I appreciate your answers, and I do have some problems with it if we're not going to have transparency with regards to this.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 19, referral 21-0190, authorize intermunicipal agreements for shared recreation programs and park services.
Move it, Mr. President.
By Legislator Ansello, seconded by Legislator Smith. Is there any discussion on this?
Mr. President, Legislator Barrow.
Yes, Legislator Barra.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the administration, am I correct to believe that the same set of constraints and opportunities apply to this referral as to the previous one?
Through you, Mr. President, yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Next, 20.
Item number 20, referral 21-0191, authorize a contract with CP Ward, Inc. for construction services for the A Route Road Culvert Project over Irondequoit Creek tributary in the town of Perrington.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by legislator Colby, seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 21, referral 21-0192, authorize an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Gates related to the ownership and maintenance of the Elm Grove Road, or Elmford Road, Elm Grove Road, Shadow Lane Culvert System.
Move it, Mr.
Moved by
President.
legislator Colby,
Second.
seconded by legislators Ansello and Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 22, referral 21-0193, amend resolution 178 of 2018 to extend the term of the contract with the EF&P Group LLC, DBA Stonebridge Business Partners for self-insured healthcare claims auditing services.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
By legislator Delahanty, seconded by legislator Hebert. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President.
Yes.
Barra.
Yes, legislator Barra.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the administration, this contract, contract began in 2018. Do we know how much the county has recovered since 2018? Through the president.
Mr. President, Robert Franklin, Monroe County Finance. As of this date, we have not actually recovered a dollar yet.
Through the president's administration, do we anticipate recovering funds?
We do, Mr. President.
Thank you. And then finally, to the administration, do we anticipate that an extension is likely in 2022 as well?
We do expect that, Mr. President.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Legislator Hebert.
Legislator Hebert.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, the administration. The referral uses the term rigorously defended. Could you please describe what that means? By whom, et cetera.
Mr. President, by rigorously defending, that implies the county and its auditors have asserted a certain liability on the part of Excellus to the County of Monroe, and Excellus and its own attorneys have vehemently denied that liability, and they have now hired outside counsel, which is actually probably a good sign that they are ready to come to the table.
Thank you. Just one last question through you, Mr. President, to the administration. Was the 18% share in this pension the same as that in the original contract?
It is, Mr. President.
Thank you. I yield the floor, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 23, referral 21-0194, acceptance of a grant from Health Research, Inc. for the Expanded Partner Services Initiative.
Move it, Mr. President.
By legislator Smith, seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 24, referral 21-0195, authorize a contract with DentServe Dental Services PC to provide dental services for residents of Monroe Community Hospital.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by legislator Smith, seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion on this?
Mr. President.
Yes.
Through you to the administration, who provides these services currently?
Mr. President, we have Director Tallow on the phone to answer that.
Through the president, this is Alyssa Tallow. We currently do use DentServe. They have provided service to the residents since 2016.
Okay, thank you very much.
Was this an RFP, Ms. Tallow?
Yes, it was.
Were there any other responders?
There was one other respondent, 255 Greenwich, which is, actually, I apologize. That is for the next one. There was only one respondent for this RFP, which was debt serve.
How were the other potential responders notified?
So we went through and looked at different organizations that could provide these services. For the following two we did receive more than one respondent for each of those, but only one for this specific RFP.
So there was certain criteria to be a responder?
Through the president, you would just have to be able to provide the dental services that were outlined in the RFP.
So you said you looked through the potential responders for people who were qualified, so there must have been criteria.
Through the president, when we issued these RFPs for clinic services, we looked in the community just through a Google search to see who would be able to offer dental services, optometry services, and podiatry services. There were a few that we were able to find that we did include in distribution, but through the RFP process, it was put out to anyone who did want to respond.
Yeah, but the question I have is how were they notified to potentially respond to the RFP?
If there is an email address or if there is a phone number, we will call to see if we can come up with a contact, or if there's an email address, we will send it via email.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on this? Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 25, referral 21-0196, authorize a contract with Site Right, Inc., working under the umbrella of Doc Right to provide optometry services for the residents of Monroe Community Hospital.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by legislator Smith, seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 26, referral 21-0197, authorize a contract with Robert Peel, Douglas Ring, and Louis Gigla, DBA Community Hospital Podiatry to provide podiatry services for the residents of Monroe Community Hospital.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by legislator Smith, seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? I have a similar question. Who provided the services for the Monroe Community Hospital before this group?
Mr. President, this group has actually provided services to the residents for more than 35 years.
Were there any other responders?
Yes, there was. Petty Wright was the other respondent to the RFP.
And how were the other podiatry groups notified? Through Google or a phone number or an email?
Yes, if there was anyone that we were able to identify that seemed like they would be appropriate to receive the RFP, that is how we would have notified.
Well, I'm a podiatrist, and I never got the opportunity to respond to this. And I have a website, and I'm on Google.
Mr. President, this is Jeff McCann. Our procurement policy requires that all of these RFPs are advertised in the various newspapers that we put these publications in, and they're also available on the county website. So anybody who is typically involved in responding to RFPs is aware of that, and they're familiar with that process and procedure.
So this was advertised?
Yes, Mr. President, it was.
Where?
As were all of our RFPs.
Where were they advertised?
Mr. President, it was the Daily Record, the RBJ, and the Minority Reporter.
Ms. Taylor said that they were contacted through emails.
Through you, Mr. President, they were also done that way in addition to that. It's typical for departments to identify potential respondents in addition to the legal notices that we publish and in addition to the information that we post on our website.
I didn't get an email.
Mr. President, I think that might be a violation of our ethics code if you did and if you responded.
Well, not that I would respond, but I don't know anybody that did get an email. So I just like to go on the record to say I don't think there was an email sent out. But
Point
any
of order,
further
Mr.
discussion?
President, are you suggesting that the county should avoid ethics to make sure that you somehow get some private funding? Is that what you're suggesting?
Legislator Morelli, I was offered this opportunity several times, several years ago. I'm speaking, and I turned it down because I don't do this kind of work, but I know other podiatrists who do that were not contacted. Does that answer your question, Legislator Morelli?
Yeah, it certainly sounded like some questionable ethics.
No. Legislator Morelli, if you ask previous administrations at Monroe Community Hospital, they've been asking me to do this for years, and I've never accepted the opportunity. So I wasn't looking for any new revenue source. I definitely don't need it, Legislator Morelli.
Mr. President, the 3 vendors that we provided contact information for were Family Foot Care of Rochester, Podiatry Associates of Rochester, and Eastside Podiatry, in addition to the other RFP avenues.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll check around to see if anybody else got notified. But I definitely was not interested to answer Legislator Morelli's question. I was just asking the question to see if everything is on the, in fairness to other groups, including dentistry and the other medical services provided. Any other discussion on this? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 27, referral 21-0198, classification of action, determination of significance pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act for the sale of county-owned tax foreclosure property located on Monroe Orleans County Line Road in the town of Hamlin.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by Legislator Dondorfer, seconded by Legislator Wilt. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 28, referral 21-0199, authorize the sale of county-owned tax foreclosure property located on Monroe Orleans County Line Road in the town of Hamlin.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by Legislator Delahanty, seconded by Legislator Hebert. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 29, referral 21-0200, classification of action, determination of significance pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act for the sale of county-owned tax foreclosure property located on Peck Road in the town of Greece.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by Legislator Dondorfer, seconded by Legislator Wilt. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 30, referral 21-0201, authorize the sale of county-owned tax foreclosure property located on Peck Road in the town of Greece.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by Legislator Delahanty and seconded by Legislator Hebert. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 31, referral 21-0202, erroneous assessment refund.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by Legislator Delahanty, seconded by Legislator Hebert. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 32, referral 21-0203, erroneous assessments, corrections, and cancellations.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by Legislator Delahanty, seconded by Legislator Hebert. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 33, referral 21-0204, authorize a term services contract with the EF&P Group LLC, DBA Stonebridge Business Partners for professional auditing services relating to the Department of Transportation consultant agreements.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by legislator Colby, seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion on this?
Yes, Mr. President, Legislator Boyce.
Legislator Boyce.
Yes, to the President, the administration, have we done this in the past, or is this a new contract?
Mr. President, Robert Franklin, Monroe County Finance. Yes, we've had this arrangement in the past for DOT closeout audits.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin.
Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 34, referral 21-0205, amend contracts with Rochester General Hospital and Strong Memorial Hospital for the University of Rochester to support the Monroe County Department of Public Health in administering COVID-19 vaccinations.
Moved by legislator Smith,
Second.
President.
seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Legislator Hasman?
I would just like to declare my interest.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 35, referral 21-0207, accept additional funding from the New York State Department of Transportation for the state-supported Consolidated Local Street and Highway Improvement Program.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by legislator Colby, seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 36, referral 21-0208, acceptance of a grant from the United States Treasury for Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by legislator Delahanty, seconded by legislator Hebert. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Are there any other matters to come before the Committee of the Whole? Committee of the Whole stands adjourned and shall rise and report in the same matter as the legislators' standing committees. The May 25th, 2021 special meeting of the legislature is reconvened. There being no unfinished business, Legislator Brew.
Thank you, Mr. President. The honorable body stands adjourned. And is scheduled, the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 8th, 2021 at 6 p.m.
In person.